Say aye when I call your name, please. Carolyn Bartlett, Lindsay Beeman, Jenna Cohen, Ethan Downs,
Aye.
I didn't hear Jenna, but I see Jenna, so I think mark it down.
Can you hear
Andrew
me? I think.
Oh, now I can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think my audio is being weird.
Andrew Eccles,
Aye.
Senator Gelser Blauen, Katie Green,
Here.
Representative Hartman, Jimmy Howard,
Here.
Tiffany Hyde,
Aye.
Belly,
Hello.
Lisa Logan,
Aye.
Grace Bengali, Representative Mannix, Juliana Pedone, Adea Powell,
Here.
Rudy Ann Rivera Lindstrom,
Aye.
Martina Shabram,
Here.
Justin Smith,
Here.
Kelly Strawn,
Hello, I'm here, present.
right? Senator Thatcher, Jennifer Wilson,
Good morning. I'm here.
Lena Leclerc.
Hi.
All right. Dea, we certainly have a quorum.
Okay, great. Next is agenda review and our consent item. Are there any changes to the agenda for today? Requested for the agenda for today? Okay. Seeing none, I would like to see if we can approve and move to approve our August 13th meeting minutes. Are there any objections? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just any objections or abstentions to that?
Yes.
Not hearing anything. The previous minutes are approved.
Okay, great. I would like to give the floor to Martina. I think you're next.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. So the first item on the agenda is we just had a little bits of housekeeping things. You know, as this is a new committee, there keeps being new things that we realize that we should probably agree on as a group and make clear as a group. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about briefly was public meetings law and public meetings voting, et cetera, particularly because there were some questions when we didn't meet quorum, I don't know what that was, a month ago or thereabouts. So we just wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page, which is to say that as we are a public body, we are bound by public meetings law, and therefore the quorum means, like, to meet quorum, we have to have a majority of voting members present, virtually present here. And that also means that we can't have somebody delegate their vote or vote by proxy or vote by email. So a person has to be literally present to be counted. They can't send a designee, and they can't vote via email. They can't vote via text. They can't send in their vote later. We can't, as a body, choose to vote all of us by email. We have to do that here present. We also talked as the co-chairs about, like, well, how long should we wait, right? We kind of like all sat around trying to figure out how long to stay. And without any, in the absence of any official rules, we decided that probably what we meant when we say, like, show up on time to meet quorum is, like, we'll wait about 10 minutes. If we haven't met quorum within 10 minutes, then out of respect for everybody's time, we'll close the meeting and reschedule, because we can't even open the meeting without quorum. So that, like, 10-minute buffer zone is kind of what we're expecting. We do hope everyone shows up right on time, but that was the sort of buffer zone that we gave for quorum. Any thoughts, feelings, questions, concerns, ideas anyone needs to raise about public meetings law or voting? Okay, doesn't look like it. So Adea, I'll pass it back to you to lead the discussion about our attendance policy.
Okay, we as a council group discussed attendance policy, the attendance policy. If you work on the council requires regular attendance to our meetings. If the council is unable to attend meetings for a duration that impacts the work of the council, such as missing meetings for 2 consecutive months, would terribly impact us and ability to work, or consistently demonstrates a pattern of absences and non-responsiveness. The board chairs may, in their discretion, request that the member seat be reappointed. Does anybody have any questions about that attendance policy? I think it's written down in the agenda. Okay, Rowan, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the latest draft was. If it's okay with you,
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat.
The latest draft, okay.
Yeah, that I think there were a couple of minor edits yesterday that folks
Okay, I'm
thought might be
sorry.
appropriate. No, that's okay. I think that's where we're at. Katie and Martina, does what I just put in the chat look right to you? It's basically what you just read, Adea.
Okay. I can't find it. Did you just?
Yeah, I just put it in the meeting chat.
I think that matches what our like most recent discussion, just so that everyone's on the same page. You know, we kind of went back and forth on how to word this and what felt most salient, understanding that like everyone is here voluntarily and volunteering their time, most of us, and are all really busy people with busy lives. And also that we can't do the work of this council if people aren't showing up consistently, particularly because we can't even open a meeting without quorum. So we tried to find something that would kind of balance between understanding that people have lives and understanding that we need to be committed to this work. And so this was kind of our middle ground. So if anyone has any concerns, we can discuss.
Yeah, so the middle ground was missing all meetings for 2 consecutive months.
And an acknowledgement that there might be reasons that folks, can't make meetings for a couple months, someone's on maternity leave or something like that. But then also recognizing that if you're not in contact with the members of the council and letting us know what's going on, we don't have any way of knowing if, you're intending to continue with the council or not. So I think keeping that discretion there, knowing that there would be a lot of reach out to someone who was not attending meetings before that happened, just to clarify that.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
The first question is, if a member needs to be reassigned or reappointed, does that then remove them from quorum? As we try to move forward. So if you've identified a person whose seat needs to be reappointed, are they still counted towards quorum, or do you wait until they're reappointed? Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I'm being clear.
Yeah, I think so. Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but the law says that we have to have a minimum of half of the voting members in attendance. And I don't believe there are any exceptions for people who are removed. So for example, if we remove someone and we don't reappoint their seat, the quorum doesn't change. Is that correct, Kevin? Quorum is still 10.
Yeah, that's correct. We need 10 voting members to show up for a quorum. No matter how many people are, or if a position is unfilled, it's still going to be 10.
Okay, that's helpful. And then my other question is just the complication of filling that role once you need to reappoint it, and if that's a realistic possibility, particularly if that position is still not impacting quorum. And so if the quorum limit is still the same with or without that person, nervousness about filling it if you remove them or if they get reappointed. So those 2 things.
Just to clarify, Jimmy, are you asking if it would be difficult to fill the seats if we remove someone? Yeah, I think it's one of the things that Adea is going to bring up. But for example, if we usually have a pool of folks who have applied for seats on the council, and have said, yeah, you didn't give me the seat this time, but in the future I'd like to be considered. And so I keep that pool. We can also solicit, let folks know, which I think is about to happen, that we do have some openings coming up, and ask them to make recommendations or to talk to their colleagues. And we can also share that information with organizations like the Oregon Community College Association, the Oregon Council of Presidents, the Alliance of Independent Colleges and Universities, and the student associations, to ask them if they can recommend folks who might be candidates.
Any other questions about that policy? Okay, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just curious if you all have just kind of a preferred policy in terms of anticipated absences.
Andrew, are you asking if someone knows that they're going to be, for example, on sabbatical for a period of time?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, yeah, I think that's why we sort of had the 2 months, and I think that we felt that it was agreed by the chairs. They felt that 2 months would be fairly reasonable. If it was longer than that, it would definitely impact the work of the council, and we might talk with someone about stepping away from the council, allowing us to reappoint their seat, and then potentially coming back onto the council when their break was over. So there's a lot of flexibility in that. And obviously if someone is, out for surgery and they think they're going to be gone 2 months, but it's actually 2.5 months, there's a lot of the policy is written to be flexible in circumstances like that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would say that it certainly is wonderful to let us know. It doesn't matter for quorum, right? Whether or not there's no such thing as like an excused absence for quorum's purposes. But I do think it's really great to let us know so that we know that folks haven't just fallen off the planet. There have been some folks who just never respond to an email ever. And so if you're communicating, that definitely helps us understand what's going on, what the context is.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I would like to see if we could approve the attendance policy. If anyone approves it, could we raise our hands? I guess we could do it like that, Kevin, or do you want disapproved?
It's probably easier if we just ask if there's any objections or abstentions.
Yes, is there any objection to the attendance policy?
As written there in the chat.
As written in the chat.
Yeah, not hearing anything. The attendance policy is approved by council consent.
Thank you. Okay, next in line is Rowan, and going over our media policy.
Is it maybe the request for student member applications?
Oh, I skipped one. Okay, yeah, okay, we have, I skipped one. Yes, we have a request for student members applications. We're seeking, I think, to replace 2 student members possibly. And I think Rowan sent out the email, and also we're looking for student reviewers as well. So if you could send it around to people that you know. I've already sent it to 2 universities myself. Anything you want to add to that, Rowan?
I would just add, I think we might have 1 seat open for students.
Oh, 1 student, okay.
But our pool of students is empty right now. And so we'd love to have several more folks who felt like they would be interested in the work. And then we also, the other part of the other form that is to ask folks who might be interested in reviewing the work of the council probably in the spring. So when, for example, we have the draft survey, we would love to have folks take a look at that, and especially students, because they'll be the ones taking the survey. So the idea is that we can gather a group of folks who might be interested. There's no commitment on your part for, submitting a interest form. And I'm happy to resend those links as well, if that would be helpful to anyone.
Go ahead, Belle.
I have two questions with regard to the student committee member. Is there any requirement about that the student must come from an institution that's like private or public, or like does the student like have to have a job on campus that's like related to sexual misconduct or related to like representing a minority on campus? And another question is like, for example, I'm from Reed College. I'm a student member here. Is there any requirement that the student must not come from Reed again?
So how we've handled that in the past, so there are the seats on the council for students are assigned by category. So community college, public university, private university. We'd like to have a pool of students from all of those, just because that way we will be able to draw folks down. And you're correct, the student should be involved with an organization on campus that works for equity and justice and diversity. And that can be very broadly defined. It could be student government, it could be a peer mentor, right? There's a lot of different ways that could be met. And then I don't think that I think there's probably a preference for diversity in membership on the council, geographic as well as institutional diversity. So I don't know that our first choice would be someone from Reed again, because we already have youth. But if no one else were to apply from a private university and there was a seat open, I think that would be considered. Just so you know, when those nominations are made, they are reviewed by the wonderful folks at the Oregon Sexual Assault Task Force and the Oregon Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. And then recommendations are sent to Ben Cannon, who's the HEC executive director. And so he's the person who actually does the appointing.
I see. Thank you for the explanation. One last question about student reviewers. Will they get paid? Like in what way their time and effort put into this project can be like, can be rewarded? Will there be any kind of reward?
Not from us. I'm so sorry. I believe, Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that someone who is doing like a one-time review would not be eligible for the compensation that the Oregon makes available to folks who sit on boards. So yeah, so not from us, but and oh God, I hate to say maybe they can get extra credit, but potentially if they're working with someone at their school, they could receive that. The other thing is that it actually looks really good on the resume to say that you can put in volunteer work, Sexual Misconduct Survey Council reviewer spring 2025. Yeah, no money, sorry.
And maybe once you get in the pool of reviewers, once we edit the survey, they could still be kind of top in the reviewer pool or in the pool of people who can actually be a member of the survey. Maybe they can have preference or something. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, I will go ahead and if I could, is there any other questions? If not, I will go ahead and turn this over to Rowan to talk about our media policy.
Hi, okay. And in the meeting materials, there's a statement on media contact, and I think it's more of a statement or a guideline than a policy, but you all can decide that. And this is in response to what happened a couple months ago when all of a sudden everybody was being contacted by press and wasn't quite sure what they were being contacted about or how to respond. So the co-chairs came up with policy or a statement that says, The Sexual Misconduct Survey Council members may be contacted by representatives of media or other members of the public for comments on the work of the council. While all council members have the right to comment as individuals on any issue, they are asked to refrain from speaking on behalf of the Sexual Misconduct Survey Council unless the council has agreed that they will do so. Any media inquiries may be directed to Rowan Frost, who will consult with the council co-chairs and HEX communication director and other senior staff. So the idea behind the policy is that you can talk to anybody about anything as a citizen, but if someone is asking for a statement as a council member about council work, we ask that you check in with us. And that the idea being that way messaging would be consistent. Are there any concerns about that, or is there anything that you would like to see added or taken away from it?
Okay, Ron, can we move forward?
It seems like there isn't any comments, so yeah.
Okay, well, we'll move forward. We're going to get some updates from the subcommittees. The first one is Katie and Jenna from the Language Committee.
Sorry, Adea, just checking. Did you want to approve those guidelines?
Oh, yes.
Before
Let's
we move
see.
on?
Is
Okay.
there any objection to these, the media guideline? Okay.
I
There's
just
no
sent this picture
objection.
to Nicole.
Okay. Wait,
Your
someone,
boss, me.
did someone object? I'm sorry. Okay, I don't think that was an objection.
Yeah, just a live mic, I think.
Okay, I don't think that was an objection. I think it's approved. So. Okay, so the next step is to go ahead and get some updates from the subcommittees. Let's do the language subcommittee first. Katie and Jenna.
I'm happy to cover this. So Jen and I met our last subcommittee meeting regarding language, and I put in the chat the definition, or I put in the chat ORS statutory definition of sexual misconduct, which then includes a number of other terms that we feel should be defined at some point in our survey. And so Jenna and I are working on definitions of these terms kind of in here. So sexual misconduct means an incident of sexual harassment, sexual violence, intimate partner violence, domestic violence, sexual exploitation, stalking, harassment, or violence based on sexual orientation or gender. Some of those terms may not need a further definition, but some are fairly broad. And so we decided that I would work on a definition to define sexual violence. And Jenna is working on a definition of intimate partner violence. We're drawing, I mean, there's a variety of places where these definitions already exist statutorily. Those may be used as guide points, but not necessarily, we may not actually use the statutory language because we want to encompass broader behavior. So there was discussion around that. And so we are then, I think, also going to be meeting, our next meeting will be maybe a joint meeting with the writing committee, is my understanding, to further discuss definitions. So that is what we worked on in our subcommittee meeting. Anything to add, Jenna, if I missed?
No, I think that was everything. Thank you so much for taking that.
Okay, thank you for the update. Outreach Committee?
I'm not sure if someone else is better to do this update. I actually could not attend last meeting, so I don't know if Rowan or Kevin, if you all want to like kind of just share generally, or if there's a member from this committee here that could also maybe fill in.
Like Rowan, maybe you and I can, because I was there, but I had to leave early.
Yeah,
So maybe
Justin,
you could help
Justin was
fill
there
in,
as
yeah.
well. So yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe Justin can help as well. Let's see. A couple of the things we had talked about were thinking about IRB processes, getting maybe pre-approval from one public institution or something like that. One of the things that we're concerned about is that we want most of the institutions will have someone who thinks about how data is collected and make sure that it's collected ethically. Of course, the larger institutions will have internal review boards, IRBs, to look at the survey and make sure that there isn't anything in there that they're concerned about being an ethical breach. So a lot of times these kinds of surveys are designated as exempt by IRBs, but if there's precedence for that, it makes it a little bit easier for other IRBs then to review it and go, okay, well, if other people are feeling that this is all right, then it's probably okay. We also talked about a newsletter that can go out on a fairly regular basis to update the institutions and other folks who have an interest in this issue. The idea being that the newsletter would go out on when we have a major announcement. For example, we're looking at getting a newsletter written that could be approved at the next council meeting to be sent out that would be basically a status update of the work of the Sexual Misconduct Survey Council. So to let our institutional partners and other interested parties know this is where we're at in the work that we've been taking on. The next newsletter would probably go out around January or February when the draft survey was approved, and it could say the draft survey is approved. Here's where to find it. We're interested in reviewers, right? So just to update folks. A third one might go out when the implementation guidelines are ready, which will probably be about May or June. And then a fourth one would go out at the beginning of the academic year when the survey and implementation guidelines are released to let folks know what the Survey Council's next steps might be. So that's the idea. So basically that we're going to draft the newsletter and then bring it to the council at the October meeting, and you'll all have an opportunity to review it. And if it's okay with you, then we can go ahead and send it out. Jimmy, do you want to talk about the plan you submitted?
Yeah, I mean, just really quickly, I think we had a couple of ideas when we first met in terms of some outreach opportunities that we could sort of think about and brainstorm. So I took the time to just basically outline some things that we could do to get a sense from the committee, sort of what's within our purview, opportunities, or even things that we may or may not want to do. So so the list includes things like potentially hosting a webinar that might be able to help folks get in line, connect the dots, share best practices, et cetera, just so that we have some focused time with the institutions and give them some direct person-to-person feedback. And then I think, Rowan, you mentioned a bunch of like just opportunities to keep the institutions updated on our progress, expectations, when they could receive information. Again, I wasn't there at the meeting, so I don't know what the group said or yes or no to. But part of that was also thinking about identifying folks from each campus that we could liaison with on this work to make sure that there's somebody that we can be in contact with to send the newsletters to and make sure that we are getting that identified from each campus. And then from there, it really was just ways that we can just get support resources out to the campuses. Again, not TBD if that's in our purview of something we want to do. But I know that we had interest in doing some prepackaged items for the campuses, particularly that have maybe some smaller staffs or smaller marketing departments. So if they're in the need, they can use some of the materials that we provide to help promote the survey when we get to that point. So of some really good stuff in there. Again, I'm excited to meet with the committee next time. But I think that kind of encompasses it. I don't know if the draft proposal is in the documents anywhere, Rowan and Kevin, but I know I submitted it for the subcommittee's review. So
I believe, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's in, if you go to the page that has the Sexual Misconduct Survey Council information about meetings and you click on the tab that says past meetings, the last outreach committee meeting, I believe your materials were there, and they are also available in Basecamp. And I will go ahead and find that link and put that public link in the, okay, Kevin's already done that. Thank you, Kevin. Great.
I think that's it for us.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's the last committee update, at least on the agenda. Should we talk about the writing committee update, or we could go ahead and close, even though it's really not on the agenda?
I think the next item on the agenda is the survey writing subcommittee update, and then there's a couple of things that you asked me to discuss that I'm prepared to talk about as well.
Okay.
But I think, Medea, you were going to give the.
Oh, okay. This is why you. Okay. The survey writing subcommittee. I didn't have the full survey open. It only showed me the first page. It didn't go onto the second page. Okay. The survey writing subcommittee. Okay, we've decided on a survey as a committee. I think it's the CCSVS survey. I'm sure it has a name for the acronym. We decided on it based on basically the brevity of it and how condensed and smooth. I know that's a better word for smooth, but we like the flow of the survey. And we saw that it condensed the questions, the sexual assault misconduct questions, into basically 2 or 3 questions instead of 7 or 8. So we like the condensed nature of it and the skip logic of it instead of going that way. Our next meeting, we're going to hopefully work with the language committee to come up with a definition of sexual misconduct, which will help us start. Well, we're going to come up with a definition as well, and we're going to work with the language committee as well about that. And that's going to help us start to draw up questions for the survey. The first thing we're going to do also next week is look at demographics, the questions for the demographic, which we thought would be an easier thing or easier task to start with. So what is this? Outreach plan. Oh, okay. But yes, so that's kind of where we are and what we've done. Anybody else want to add to that? Did I miss anything?
Just to add to what you've said and to answer Katie's question.
Katie had a question.
Yeah, the CCSVS is the committee decided to use that sort of as a base survey. There are 3 main surveys that have been well studied, well researched, and well validated. The CCSVS is one that comes from the Bureau of Justice. It is also one that was developed by the team that is currently developing the federal VAWA campus survey, which will be released in a couple of years. And so it was felt that if we sort of used their version as sort of a base and then extrapolate from there to make sure that our survey meets all of the requirements of the legislation, because it's much more extensive than what's in that survey, that would be a good starting point. The other 2 surveys are the AAU, which is the American Association of Universities, and the ARC3, and I don't remember what that acronym stands for. My understanding is that the AAU survey is being discontinued, and the ARC3 is still out there. But there are good points and bad points to all of that, but it was just seen as a good starting point.
Yes. And none of all of the 3 surveys are very good surveys, but some of them have positives and negative. Even the CCSVS doesn't cover the totality of what we have to come up with in the law, the questions for the that we have to come up with. So yeah, so it's just a starting point. Okay, I think that's
Quick question,
it for,
Idea.
oh, okay.
Just a quick question. When do you all meet? You said that the survey writing committee and the language committee were going to meet. When are you all meeting?
Have we decided on our next meeting, Kevin?
I haven't sent out the invite yet, but I think it's decided. Let me look up when it was.
Just because I'm going to try to get all of the institutional definitions from the regional coordinators. And so I just want to be sure that I get them to you all before your meeting.
Oh, okay.
That way we kind of have what all the institutions are using as far as definitions, because if we can align all that, that makes it easier for institutions, right?
Yes.
In some way, make them similar.
October 9th at 3:00.
Okay, excellent. I can get it before then. Thank you.
And for the members of the committee, the invite will be sent out.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'll put that on my calendar. Rowan, I think you're next.
Okay, I'm trying to put this, I want to put this, let's see. Okay, let me get this link in the chat real quick. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that's the link to the folder that has all of the surveys if anyone is interested. Thank you. So I've been asked to give an update on a meeting that we had with representatives from a couple of other states. That meeting took place on August 9th, and not everyone was able to attend. It was a training meeting, a presentation, an informational session, so it wasn't publicly noticed or anything like that. But just to kind of go over, and Andrew can probably correct me on this, but at least 8 states currently have implemented Every Voice in Action legislation or similar laws that are similar to ours. Connecticut, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Those laws are all administered by different units in each state. There is a monthly meeting of representatives from many of those states, and I do attend those regularly. So that's really helpful to be meeting with colleagues who are doing similar work. Several of the states have already completed at least one data collection cycle, and we're lucky to have the benefit of their experience as we develop our survey and our implementation. Amanda Robbins of the Massachusetts Department of Higher Education and Kitty Kiefer of the New Hampshire Attorney General's Office were presented to us. Those presentations are also available on Basecamp. The PowerPoints that they used. We asked them to talk about lessons learned. So there was a lot of information in their presentations on implementation, so I suggest that you take a look at that. But some of the discussion that we had were surveys should be as brief as possible, strive for a completion time of 10 minutes or less. Don't ask for higher details, balance what you need to know with what would be nice to know. And that's based on feedback that they had received from folks who'd completed the survey. Longer surveys are more traumatizing. They're less likely to be completed. Surveys that ask for a lot of detail about the incidents can also be really re-traumatizing, and it's not clear that you really are getting any use from having that level of granular detail about a specific incident. The language used should be piloted to ensure that students don't find it intrusive or re-traumatizing, and that the questions are not seen as victim blaming. They had gotten a lot of feedback from students, and a couple of the states that have already administered the surveys have rewritten their surveys based on the feedback that they got after the first round. Massachusetts was able to package their survey in a Qualtrics file, which made it easier for institutions to set up the survey. They could take the Qualtrics file, they could put it in their Qualtrics, update any language that needed to be campus specific, and then use that rather than having to recreate the entire survey in Qualtrics. We've sent out, I believe on behalf of Jen, I'm sorry, I don't remember, Caroline, I'm sorry, was that the survey writing committee? I think it was the survey writing committee. We sent out a request to institutions to let us know what surveys they're currently using, if they've used any in the last few years, and also what what systems they're using for data collection. Are they using Qualtrics? Are they using Google Forms or whatever? So that we can maybe help them with by providing a similar package. Questions need to be tailored for your campus populations. So we have a huge range of campus populations in Oregon. So students who take classes mostly online, who are non-traditional, that is not within that 18 to 21-year-old undergrad group. Those questions, we need to think about the language in those questions, because a lot of students felt that it didn't apply to them if they weren't living on campus as a young adult. When the survey is set up, the first question probably should be, what is your age? This is how they set it up. Because of ethical issues in collecting data on sensitive topics from minors, they recommended that minors be excluded from data collection. That's not something we've agreed upon, but that's just how they managed it. In terms of the other ways of other things they mentioned, promoting the sexual misconduct response resources within the survey is really, really important, to have a link to a resource page on every page of the survey, and direct people to the resource page when they exit. So they submit the survey, exit, the next page they get is the resource page, and then they can go on from that. The tailoring the resources is really important to make sure that campus mental health and advocacy services and local domestic violence and sexual assault response agencies are part of that survey list. And then there should also be some national links included, such as RAIN's text-based line. The office that the survey comes from really matters. Campuses will have different levels in trust in the units of campus administration and social services. So, for example, a survey that comes from a health center or advocacy program is generally seen by students as more trustworthy than one that comes from a Title IX office or campus security. And that's not to throw shade on anybody who works in those really important areas, but students felt that the way that the data was going to be collected and used, it felt safer to them when it came from a health center or from an advocacy center. And then finally, the use of incentives is really controversial. So some students viewed them as bribing us for our trauma, and others said, when incentives weren't offered, they were like, our institution is rich. Why aren't they offering to compensate us for our time and information? So there is some research on sexual misconduct survey implementation that discusses this specific issue, and there are some recommendations. So when we get to that a little later on in our work, we can review those. But they mentioned that campus culture and creativity are really important to develop incentives that are relevant to a school's students. Some examples that they gave were a prime parking pass. So if you have a particularly desirable parking lot and you have parking passes, raffling off a parking pass for folks who complete was considered one incentive. My personal favorite, because this is on my bucket list, was a ride on a Zamboni rink cleaner. That was a raffle at one school. And then I just want to mention this because I just saw this the other day, but the University of Oregon, when they did a campus climate survey, an incentive that they offered was to donate $1 to a victim services fund for every completed survey. So I just wanted to mention that because I really like that one. Does anyone else who was at that meeting have anything to add to that? Okay, and I think Kevin is going to make those notes, the notes that I just went over, available in the meeting minutes. And then the last thing, additional training opportunities. These are on Basecamp in the bulletin board, and I've also prepared a document that has those. There are 3 things that I wanted to highlight for folks. The first one is free, and it's virtual, and it's coming up on October 15th and 16th. It's the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine's Action Collaborative on Preventing Sexual Harassment 2024 Public Summit. So in Michigan, this event is going to have, it's going to be have virtual attendance options. You have to register, but registration is free, and it's intended for the broader higher education community, sexual violence and harassment researchers, sexual harassment response practitioners, grassroots and nonprofit organizations, public and private foundations, and federal and state policymakers. So I think that's pretty much all of us. And again, that's the 15th and 16th. There are two more that are coming up. Just real briefly, both of these are in person, and I'm sorry, one of them is in person, the other one is completely online, but both of them have registration fees. So in December 10th through the 11th, I think I've got 21st, but it's the 10th through the 11th. The Chrysalis Network is sponsoring the Solving the Campus of Sexual Assault and Dating Violence Puzzle International Conference. It costs anywhere from $250 to $300. It's completely online. The sessions will be recorded. And then in January, the NASPA Strategies Conference is happening in Boston, and there is no virtual option at all. Everything for that one is online, or is in person, sorry, and the cost is somewhere in between $600 and $925 for registration. One other training opportunity that I'm trying to set up for you all are with the folks from the Prevention Innovations Resource Council. I've got an email out to them, and I'll be following up when I haven't heard back from them yet. But I met with them a few months ago, and they had offered to meet with the council to talk about some of the implementation information and also some information on analysis of survey data and how best to do that. So they're folks who sit on their local council, and they're also researchers at a university who specialize in this field. And that is all that I have.
If you shared this already, Rowan, are those held anywhere in Basecamp, or would we reach out to you if we had questions about those?
Yeah, they should be available on the bulletin board. And let me see if I can get a public link for that so that I can put it in the chat. Yeah. Yeah, there's a public link to that information. Folks should be able to access it. And I'm happy to send it as well if anyone would like.
If I remember anything from that meeting, I think tying it to something like something positive, like your voice is being heard, or allow your voice to speak, or something like that. So definitely tying it to a nonprofit and having a marketing campaign saying something like a catchphrase like your voice is heard, or something, some kind of catchphrase phrase would probably help. I think I remember that in the meeting as being very helpful. Anybody else want to add anything? Came to the meeting? Well, we're a little bit over the 45-minute mark. We kind of try to do it a little early, but if there's nothing else, then we could go ahead and adjourn the meeting for today. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Adea and
Have a good
Rowan and
day.
Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.